Good evening, mate. How are you today?
Good, thanks, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, can't complain, really. Can't complain. Could you do a small introduction for the listeners on yourself, please?
Yeah, so I'm Matt Garvey. I've been a professional rugby player for 11 years. Did 4 years at London Irish through the academy system into the first team. Then I went to 7 years and still at Bath Rugby. 2017 club captain for 2 years before I decided to take a step back. And yeah, basically just kind of gone through every kind of thing there is in rugby, really, from academy up to England Saxon.
Oh, nice. So, obviously, starting out with London Irish Academy, how
Yeah.
did you come into the fold of being part of that?
A bit of a different route, really, to everyone else. I played football until I was 17, so I never really played rugby.
Oh, blimey.
I only started playing rugby when I went to a sixth form college. Um, and at the time, I was playing football for Dagenham and Redbridge under 18s and a bit of midweek, bit of Capital League team. And then, yeah, went to a sixth form college just to carry on my education. And it was a rugby school. And there I was about 6'2", 3" at the time. Big lump, but everyone expected me to be decent at rugby, and I was probably the worst rugby player you've ever seen.
Oh, blimey.
So yeah, I went from there. I started playing at college, and then started playing a bit of started playing a bit of Saracens in their A League,
Okay.
their teams, and then went to university. I told my family it was obviously for educational purposes, but it was actually just to play rugby and have a laugh. So I gave up football and yeah, cracked on with rugby at university, and then got picked up as I graduated and signed for London Irish.
So, did you go to university around London Irish area, around Reading then?
Yeah, I went to university at St Mary's, Twickenham, West London.
Yep.
And while I was at St Mary's, my second year of uni, I was playing for Saracens
Okay.
on Monday night. And yeah, London Irish showed some interest, and they were literally 5 minutes down the road. So at the time, it was kind of like, do I travel during my third year at university, my main year, an hour and a half to St Albans, or do I travel 5 minutes on the train to Sunbury on Thames, where they train, where they're based? Well, obviously they played at Reading, but they were based in West London. So I made the decision based on laziness, really, just to travel 5 minutes.
Well, it makes sense then, but obviously from that, your career has gone upwards. So,
Yeah, I mean, at the time, London Irish. That year, the year I decided to go there, they made Premiership final. They lost to the Leicester Tigers 1 minute by 1 point, and they were in the European semi final. So it was it wasn't like the Saracens that we know in the last 5-6 years.
I mean, when you look, I assume it's all the same sort of school graduate time. The amount of players that have gone from London Irish to Bath is
Yeah,
high from
yeah,
that sort of era.
yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
So, was there something that linked everyone suddenly going from London Irish to Bath, or was it
Yeah,
just happened to be a move that everyone took?
no, it was so. The London Irish at the time were probably, they weren't one of the wealthiest clubs, and we didn't have the biggest squad. So we kind of, our academy system. If you look back at London Irish's academy system, probably from going back the last 10 years, to see how many professionals, how many internationals they've produced, you have to tip your hat to them. But at the time, we had such a small squad, and with injuries, the academy boys were getting thrust into the first team. So we were getting a lot more experience than other academies, and we thrived on it. You get thrown at the deep end, and we loved every minute of it. And we had some great coaches. And then into our third year, a couple of coaches departed Irish, and they went to Bath.
Okay.
Our head coach Toby Booth and our academy coach Neil Hatley at the time. He went to sign as the forwards coach, and Boothie went over there as I think like a line-out coach and attack coach. And they knew our contract status because they'd signed us to certain periods, and they came looking for us at the first chance. So we'd worked with them before, and we really enjoyed it. We'd really done well. We'd gone from academy boys into first team players, and there was an opportunity that they wanted to take us down to the West Country. And yeah, four of us, I think it was at the start, jumped at it. There was two coaches there, and our head of S&C at Irish had gone with them. So there was three coaches then and four players, and then in the next couple of years, I think two or three more came along.
Oh, so yeah, so it has. I didn't quite realise how well London Irish had produced players over the years until sort of looking today online, just so I
Yeah,
sounded a bit more knowledgeable. And looking into it, you realise the amount of players that had gone across from London Irish to Bath all at that
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Uh,
You look at like Jonathan Joseph, who's in England international on British line. Anthony Watson, international British line. There's been myself, who's played over 200 first team games in the Premiership. There's been Max Laheve, Tommy Homer, Dave Cece, who left us with Bath, but become an Italian international. You know, there's been so many high caliber players. You look at the other boys from Irish. So Joe Thokinasinger came from Irish. You know, he's got a few England caps. I'm sure he'll go and get many more. So yeah, they just have an eye for talent really, and yeah, I think there was a bit of resentment at the start that we were poaching. I say we were poaching London Irish's talent.
Yeah, of course. That's always the way within anything. When players move on, there's always a slight bit of resentment. Like you've obviously lost two coaches, and then you see a load of players follow. It happens within anything really. So then obviously, so when did the journey start at Bath as well?
What do you mean when did it start? Sorry.
So you'd been at London Irish 4 years plus academy, or was that 4 years including academy?
No, so I left university, so I was the granddad of the academy. I joined the academy at 21, and there was boys leaving college at 18 in the academy as well. So I looked after them. You got boys coming out of public school that didn't have a clue, never lived on their own, didn't have to do their washing, and there was like me that had lived on a budget for 3 years, knew what I was doing a bit more streetwise. So kind of say, yeah, there was a few boys that didn't even have to get their Sky TV, had to sign up to Sky TV, that sort of thing. So that was quite amusing. So the 2 years academy, and then I signed my first senior contract at Irish for 2 years. And at the end of that, just got an offer from Bath to go down there. So, like I said, when I was at Irish, I got my first Saxons cap.
Okay.
And even though I was only been there 4 years, the turnover at the club was massive. We lost so many players.
Right.
And I was looking in the change room, and I had 80 odd appearances. And I think I had like the second most appearances in the forward. So I think it was David Pace ahead of me, and then there was me. And I just got comfortable with it. Just got kind of comfortable. I felt like I kind of stagnated a little bit. I'd become a bit stale. That I'd gone from university, academy, first team, England Saxon, like it was all an upward projection. And I just kind of just levelled off. I just become comfortable, and I thought, you know, now's the time to challenge myself and to move on and, you know, find the coaches that got me on that rise when they were at Bath. And when they came with the opportunity, we had a look, went down there, and my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, she fell in love with the city of Bath, and she went, yeah, this isn't a bad place. And the rest is history.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, like you say, you obviously had a quick rise from being a footballer to then going university, academy rugby player, and then peaking at, I suppose, England Saxons. So that in such a short space of time to then get an offer from, well, I don't know, Bath wouldn't have been a bigger club at the time than Irish, based on what you'd said about form and stuff.
I think by the end of it, like Irish were probably bottom half table, and Bath were pushing top half. So it was a little bit of improvement. Irish, we were losing more than we were winning. Bath was definitely, the way they were recruiting and the players they were signing, it was definitely like a step up. But you're right. Like it was, like I went from not even playing rugby to, I remember playing third team at college, then second team, then first team. I went on trial to Harlequins when I was in my upper sixth year after 1 year of playing. Got knocked back. University second team, university first team, and then all the way up to academy first team. So my projection was like that, skyrocket. And I think a little bit of it, I got caught up in it a little bit and just thought, you know, naturally this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And then, naturally, like I said, where's the limit? This is just keep going up and up and up. And I felt a bit, like I said, got too comfortable with it. And just thought, you know, naturally, if I keep doing what I'm doing, and then kind of a bit savvy that, which is unlike me, kind of switched on. I needed to be challenged a bit more, and yeah, that was when the move came along.
And then obviously the move came along, and you've then picked up a second England Saxons cap since being at Bath.
Yep.
And stuff, and then I suppose the Saxon stuff has gone out of the fold, so that is no longer available as an option.
Say again. So it's not really an go on. Sorry.
So it's no longer like the Saxons isn't there anymore. So it's either playing top level Prem or international. There's not the Saxons development anymore like there was.
No, it's gone now. Yeah, they kind of. I think Eddie Jones. I think he killed it. It was for an England Saxons thing. It was very. it was almost like a touring side. It was kind of not amateur, but it was very different to being in a professional club and what you expected it. Like my first cap compared to my second cap. Like my first cap, I was there, head switched on. To my second cap, which was a bit more relaxed and just kind of understanding what it was about, was just getting a group of boys together really and playing that boys that could push on. But yeah, they ended that, and which was sad because it was good fun. It was a good laugh, and it bridged that gap between being a professional, in the Premiership to being an international. So, like I said, it got to a point where I realised that international status wasn't going to happen for me, and I just looked at other ways to kind of leave my mark in the game, I guess. And that's when the captaincy happened.
So obviously you had 2 years as captain, and I take it does that go down as like the peak of your career thus far?
Yeah, like I said, I always wanted to leave my mark, like on the game, not like in terms of a legacy, but just something I could look back on in years to come and think, I was part of that, or I achieved that. And when I realised that it wasn't going to be England status, I was like, right, how else can I do it? And a vacancy opened up to captaincy, and I remember speaking to our DOR, Todd Blackadder, about some bits and bobs that I'd researched and looked into culture and leadership in the off season. We had a discussion, and he said about captaincy. I kind of jumped at it, and yeah, it was kind of, when you become club captain of such a historic club, and you can put your name to it, and you see your name carved in the wood on the board, like that's immense. But then having the chance to lead my kids out at Twickenham at the Clash in front of 62,000 people was just, something that will live with me forever, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. So, and then what did you just decide to give up captaincy, or was it a progression thing as a club?
No, it was like I got injured in my second year quite badly. I dislocated and broken my ankle. I did loads of ligaments along with it. And I took a step back, and there was a few things happening behind the scenes. When you're club captain, when you're a player, and I don't want to say elite sports, I'm sure sports are different, but especially in rugby, there's parts of it where your ignorance is bliss. Like you're just a player. You go on, you wake up in the morning, you train, you play on a Saturday, it repeats itself the following week. When you're club captain, you get to see things behind the scenes. You get to have dialogue with owners, with CEOs, with coaches, and you're much more part of it. And I knew that going into it. What I wasn't prepared for was my inability to switch off.
Right.
So I work home with me. Now, obviously, as a rugby player, people probably don't see that. You come home, you finish training, that's it. You have a shower, and you go home, you eat, you sleep, and you repeat the next day. But there was just times when things would happen off the pitch, and my phone would go, or I'd be like at the middle of the night, my phone would go and I had to answer it. Or I think the final straw for me was my son's third birthday, and we were sitting downstairs, and he was opening his presents, and then my phone started going. I missed the first one, and then the CEO started calling me, and then the team manager, and then the coach started calling me, and then one of the other players started calling me, and something had happened, and I had to deal with it.
Yeah.
And little things that could have been dealt with so much better or different ways. And it was just things that I thought, this is not what I signed up for. I wanted to sign up because I wanted to improve the culture. I wanted us to achieve things. And it just got to the point where I was like, I'm not fulfilling what I wanted to do, and let someone else have a go. I'm being injured. I was going to the last year of my contract, and I was just like, I need to focus on me a bit more. And I just took the decision, which was really hard. It was really hard in some aspects, and in some aspects it was really easy. And I just said, I remember it was hard because I had to tell Todd Blackadder that I wanted to step down. I think I told him probably as early as January or February into my second season. Not that I immediate turn off. Like I said, I can work my nuts off to the end of the season, but just let you know. And then he left for Japan, and then the new director of rugby, Stuart Hooper, took over, and then I had to repeat the conversation with him. And it probably coincided well. A new DOR probably wanted a new captain, and it just all fell into place, I guess. So yeah, it's something that I made the decision to step down, and one that I'm glad I don't regret.
Yeah. So, like you say, it became more off the pitch. It was then sort of more a business role rather than like you say, the on-field legacy stuff, being a leader, bringing you through, showing a path. It then became a side business almost, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, there was parts as a captain of a squad. Like there was bits I really enjoyed, like working with the psychologist Katie Warren. We created a culture of values, behaviours. You know, we spoke about how we were going to achieve things, and we led on that, and we worked so hard at it. And those bits I loved. And then the other bit of captaincy that I really enjoyed was bringing people, what you call bringing people along that journey with you. So it's a team game, or in an industry or a business, it's not just one person. You know, it's, if you can just share that journey, if you can share that success, whether it's with the future captains of the club or youngsters that are going to fulfill senior playing roles, bring them along with you. And, you know, I got a great group of people around me, and, you know, I really enjoyed that, and I thrived under it. But there was just bits to the business side of it, which not necessarily I agreed with, or damaged the culture that we were trying to build.
Yeah.
And you'll hear me talk a lot about culture, and it's something that I'm really big on. And the thing about culture in sport is that it's the best successful clubs will have the great culture. Like, everyone has a culture, whether it's good or bad. And culture is so hard to achieve. A good culture is so hard to achieve, but it's so easy to knock, and so easy to knock it off and knock you down. So when you're working so hard on one side, and then little bits over here are just negating all that hard work, it kind of just got to the point where you're just like, you have an arm wrestle with yourself, and like, it was just never going to win.
No, of course, yeah, like you say, and then it then plays with you because you're having your family time, switch off or whatever, and you've got a phone in your pocket going berserk, and you're then like, look, this is the time I'm supposed to be getting myself away from all this switching off. I'm having a day out with the family and my kids. And in my pocket, I've got 10 missed calls from a DOR, a few from other players, because something's not right.
Yeah, exactly that. And that was like, don't get me wrong, there were bits where, it was good to be in the know when things were happening, and you'd have that ability to speak to the CEO in face-to-face over or on a phone. You know, those bits are great because obviously you're in a senior role, and that's what you sign up for and you enjoy it. But it just seemed to be that there was always something that was, without getting into details, there was always for me, there was always things that were just kind of aggravating the hard work we were doing. There was things that we could have changed so easy, small things that would have made the biggest difference, and there always seems to be an obstacle in the way. You're always fighting a losing battle. There was always an excuse, or there was always something that was like, nah, we can't do that, or that's going to be a problem. And it was just like, okay, what am I actually trying to achieve here? If I can't do things, then... So yeah, it was frustrating, but look, I look back on it with fond memories. I loved like I said, there were bits that were frustrating, but the overriding, I guess, emotion of it was amazing. And, you know, I loved being captain of the club, and I just felt at the time, with my injury and the way things were going, it was just the right time to take a step back and to enjoy it.
Of course. You say about injuries, obviously the last 18 months have been tough for you with various injuries. What have they been? Like, obviously the broken ankle, and then others.
So yeah, I've had some. I'm really quite odd. Like, if you look at my history of injuries, I've never, say touch wood, I never get soft tissue injuries. So I never get like a pulled muscle or a strain. You know, I've torn my calf, or I've pulled my hamstring. You know, little, like, what would be like a 4-weeker or a 6-weeker injury. I always seem to get kind of catastrophic ones. And they always come from games. Like, I don't get them just from running. Like, I've done my neck twice. I've had 3 neck operations. I've got 2 titanium discs in my neck. And my ankle was the other big one, where I fractured dislocation of my ankle. Yeah, so they were pretty bad. Did my first neck was 2011. Kind of a real odd one. That was done in 2 stages. Quite a dark days with that. And then my second neck was 2017, 2016. I can't remember what it was. 2017, I think. And then my ankle was January 2019. So yeah, they were all different, but similar emotions, I guess, that you run alongside them.
Yeah, because obviously it's very different for me because playing amateur level of rugby, but the annoyance factor of you want to spend all the time with your mates training, playing, and then have a few beers on a Saturday. Yeah. So I suppose that works alongside you, but it's also your job. So you get annoyed by it because you're not able to work, but you get annoyed by it or frustrated because it's also your hobby.
Yeah,
I guess.
No, it's not. There are a lot of similarities. You know, you play rugby, I guess, because you enjoy it, you want to play it, and then when you're injured, you get frustrated. same as any other sport. We just because it's a job, we still have the same emotions. We wouldn't do it if we didn't enjoy it.
No, of course.
So when you get injured, it can be quite a lonely place,
Mm.
um, especially in professional sports. And I'm sure any athlete will tell you that it's kind of no matter what the injury is, you'll always see that there'll be rehabbers and there'll be the team that trains, and your schedule will never cross over. So while they're in the gym, you're out the gym. While they're on the pitch, you're in the physio room. While they're in the physio room, you might be doing rehab in a different area. So you never really kind of integrate that much. So you'll see each other at lunch in a coffee room, which is fine. And it just seems quite weird when you're with boys every minute of every day, and you're on the pitch and you're grafting together and you're lifting together and your spare time you're relaxing, stretching together. There's a real bond built, and then as soon as you're taken out of that environment, it can get quite dark. And I remember like early on in my career, I was probably awful at injuries. Probably struggled a little bit. And then I remember my recent one, my ankle, because of the experience I've had, you just kind of, I sound like a real old boy. You kind of learn to deal with it a little bit. And I've dealt with it in the past. And I remember a youngster come to me this season when I was at my ankle. He was out with an injury at the same time. And he just said, how do you kind of deal with it all? And me and another senior player, we just said to him, look, you just kind of go with it. And you just kind of get on with it. And I went away from that conversation feeling real uneasy that I just said to a youngster that just get on with it. And that wasn't, he was obviously struggling. He'd obviously mustered up the courage to have a chat with us and just try to get something out of us. And we just kind of palmed it off in the way that, not that we were palming it off deliberately, just 10 years ago, rugby was very different to what it is now.
No, of course.
And players that we learned from were very different to what we are now. So we were probably the last of the old school rugby. So we just kind of dealt with it. And then I went back to him and I found him and I just said to him, we had a proper chat, and I said, look, I'm really unhappy with the answer I've given you. It was about a day later, and I just said to him, look, if you need anything, if you ever want to have a chat, coffee, or if you want to just chew the fat about your injury, or do you want to talk, have an event, look, I'm here for you. Just drop me a text, grab me a coffee. I'll bring the coffees. Or he was young, so I probably told him, you make the coffees, and I'll find somewhere to sit down. But yeah, it's kind of the whole sport, especially rugby, has just changed, I think, from that old school mentality into what it is now. And I think injuries can be, if you don't know what you're doing, or if you've never really had one, they can be quite dark if you don't know how to kind of approach not the isolation, but just being out of the squad, being out of the main focus of the week. You go from waking up every week to having a challenge every Saturday or Sunday, whatever the game is. But every weekend you've got a different challenge, different motivation, something to look forward to. All of a sudden you're faced with a 3-month, 6-month injury, and your weekly challenges change dramatically. Like you were in a block of 4 weeks of in a boot, not being able to walk, or in a brace, not being able to bend your knee. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That whole routine changes, and all of a sudden you're faced with just your injury is you. There's no one else with your injury at the club at the moment. It's very rare you'll get the same injury. Do you know what I mean? Someone might have a shoulder, knee, something. So rehabs be very different, but yeah, it can be quite tough. And clubs now are aware of that, and they kind of make the rehabbers work together and kind of compete with each other to bring that element of competition that us athletes, I guess, I say athletes, us competitors strive for.
No, that is it. And like you say, part of the, I suppose, breaking the mental health stigma within more so men than anything is, like you say, just, I said something the other day that I had a girl on last week talking about her mental health issues.
Yeah.
And I've had mental health issues. I've openly talk about them. And the hardest thing was breaking down my own self to pluck up the courage to speak to someone, and then saying to my mates, potentially, like, look, something isn't quite right at the minute. I can't put a finger on it, but don't judge me for it, because you worry that, like that young lad coming up to you, he's like, oh, I look up to you, club captain at the time, and he comes up to you and goes, yeah, I'm worried about this. And then that for him is a big first step. So taking that first step is the hardest step, but it's also the bravest step you can do to helping yourself on a mental health journey.
Yeah, exactly that. Like, and that's why I wasn't happy with how we kind of approached it. And like I said, it wasn't about being mean and just kind of like what we probably would have got 10 years ago. Just mate, just get on with it. Like, just stop your whinging and crack on.
Mm.
It was just through ignorance of like we just learn how to do it. Like we probably not really learned. We probably just done it. If that makes sense.
Yes.
There wasn't no learning about it. We just cracked on daily. Just got through the struggle, and now, like I said, I just felt so strongly about it. I was like, no, I've got to go back and see him, and just said, look, I appreciate you saying that. And the answer I gave you was probably the worst one I could have given, but that was probably what I was given. But I said to him, look, you know, I was a youngster in an academy trying to get into a position, trying to get into a team, and if there's anything I can help you with, I can just sit here and listen while you just vent or whatever it is you need to talk about. And just being there for each other. Like sport's mad. Like how much the best relationships I found in sport are the one that are forged through kind of training together and working hard together. And you know, I probably imagine I struggled to get that kind of same relationship outside of sport. But you know, you seem to empathise with people, you know, that are going through similar things in any industry, that are going through similar aspects, I guess. And I just had to go and find them and just say, look, sorry, mate. I gave you a really bad answer, but I'm here for you.
Yeah, of course. And you going back and speaking to him like that would have then probably meant the absolute world to him. And then, no doubt, you've sat with him, spoke a few times,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
and helped him out no end. So he's then, rather than looking down the tunnel of rehab, seen himself looking at a blank tunnel, he's then seen a light at the end of the tunnel, and knowing he's got a support network for him. There's people around him, and that it's going to help kick him on through the rehab side of things to then want to be back out on the pitch playing Wanderers rugby or the A-League stuff, and pushing on within his professional career.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, like as soon as I was aware of like what he was going through, and like I'm also the union rep for Bath, so the RPA Rugby Players Association, and you know, we have facilities and people for those to talk to. So you know, I got him talking to them. They were talking to him, working their nuts off with him, and really working hard. And you know, we got to a place where he was really cracking on, and you know, he's doing really well at the moment. So, like I said, the biggest step was him opening up. You know, and that's the biggest challenge. And like I said, as soon as you start that conversation, you know, things will hopefully improve. And you know, I found that with the little struggles I've had with injuries. But like you said, you know, with your experience, that as soon as you pluck up the courage to do that, hopefully you notice that, you know, it's that weight lifted a little bit, and you know, you can, like you said, see that light at the end of the tunnel.
No, that is it. How did you get involved with the RPA stuff? Like that side of things interests me quite a bit, especially with the restart campaign as well.
Yeah, exactly that. So we every club has to have a rep, and every year you put your name forward. Someone puts the name forward for it, and then more money goes for a vote. And then I just decided that, like I said to you before, I touched on it, is I kind of achieved everything in rugby. Like that sounds really statistical, but I don't mean that. What I mean is that, like, I've been an academy player, I've been a senior player, I've changed teams, gone to different. You know, I've moved around, and I've been a club captain. I've seen how industries work behind, and you know, I just thought, with that experience, with that level of kind of understanding of how the game's run, that maybe I could help that. So I put my name forward for it, and I won. I got the vote from the players to do it, and so yeah, I got it this year, and what a year to get it! I guess the coronavirus and the season being ended or being paused and pay cut. So it was it's an interesting year. But yeah, like I said, the whole side of it, the restart charity and the mental health side of it, I thought it's such a big thing that if I can you know, give any insight to what I've learned over the 11 years, that maybe it will help.
No, that is it. Like you say, at least I suppose that could have kept you busy during this time with players wanting to contact you, know where they stand, how things are looking moving forward. And yeah, the restart campaign is a very interesting one that obviously it needs like private funding, isn't it? It's separate from the RPA itself, so it is a charity based funded project.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I guess, if you, in black and white, it's kind of hard, I guess, to drum up money for a charity that supports current and former professional sportsmen. Because people think, well, why have we got a charity that's for people that earn, you know, decent amount of money?
Yeah.
And it's not always the case. If you look at what people earn now, and you know, if you're an international, you can earn some money, but it's not just that people live to their means. And It's also about current players that don't have the ability to, like I said, the experience to look after themselves, mentally. And it is a charity that struggles to make money. Like one of the biggest things is the restart weekend, where you'll see teams that wear red restart t-shirts in the warm up, and there'll be advertisement, and that weekend is gone now because of coronavirus. So there's a big thing, but it is such a charity it's such a big charity that does so much behind the scenes, especially with kind of retired people that, people that get like I think rugby, for instance, the average career, it used to be like, I can't remember what it was, 10 years. It's now gone down to 7 years. So there's people that have got their life mapped out in their head, and all of a sudden, boom, a catastrophic injury happens and they're out. Like, that's it. Like, they can't be rugby playing, they're to retire. And they've gone from the school, they've gone straight from school into an academy system, straight to first team, and now, boom, you're saying that they've got no aspect, they don't know what they're going to do. They're 23 years of age, 24, 25, whatever they are, thinking they're going to play rugby for the next 10, 7, 8 years, whatever it is. And they help behind the scenes so much. And, like I said, that's an aspect of mental health, because people start panicking what they're going to do, and they get themselves in such a state that someone needs to help them. And Restart has been exceptional at that.
I suppose the two standout players more recently that are well shown in the media is obviously Ed Jackson, and then the Worcester player who done his neck. Like
Michael Fatilofa.
Yes, they're the two that I've certainly most read about more recently, and you see what it's done for Michael off the field in terms of he's now out doing. I saw something on Twitter the other day that he was out doing a 5-kilometre walk after being completely written off almost.
Yeah.
And then you look at what Ed Jackson's doing in terms of he just was going to be climbing to Everest Base Camp, and then he decided he was going to do it up his staircase instead.
Yeah, that's right.
It's incredible that something has helped those two people that, like you say, people could have looked at and gone, well, they're a professional sportsman, they can self-fund, everything's all right for them because they've got money. But
it's not always the case. Like with those two, there's many more that have been helped out. But like I said, they're two extreme examples of how they've helped. Like Michael had family had to come over, the RPA, I think, and his agent, I think, sorted out some phones, sorted out some contacts, a place for them to stay. It wasn't just as easy as that. Ed, you can see how much it means to Ed, because Ed, is active in terms of raising money for the RPA. He's always promoting it, and they both had two horrific injuries which you wouldn't wish upon anyone. But through the help of where they've got treated and where they've had the physio and the care they've been given, they've been able to make a recovery. And the things that Ed's achieving now is phenomenal. I think he did, like I said, he did Everest on his staircase at his parents' house during the lockdown. So and Michael, he's out walking, and he was in a bad way by all means for a long period. So it's incredible, and that's the sort of thing that people don't always see. And people always think probably this charity is going to be easily funded, and it's not. There's things like that, which the physical side of it, but like you said, the mental side is equally just as important.
No, of course, and it is something that has become more paramount in the last few years, especially within men. It's just about breaking the stigma, getting away from the mould of being too weak to speak, and just standing up. And if you feel you've got something to say it. No one's going to laugh at you, judge you, or anything like that. And if they do, they're probably not the right sort of people that you want to be associating yourself with anyway.
No, exactly that. And like you said, the whole stigma of male sport, of being an alpha male or testosterone fueled and not being perceived as being weak. I think what people overlook is that sometimes, whether you're a leader, portraying a bit of vulnerability can be quite admirable. Showing that you're human, or that you're just like everyone else is something that, as someone watching a leader, you naturally get drawn to, because it opens up a relationship. And anyone, like, mental health affects everyone and anyone. Like, you're not immune to it. You don't have like a natural immunity to it. It can strike at any point. And I just, like you said, I think it's just important that people are there for each other, and shaking this stigma is massive. The quicker that stigma goes behind it, and I think it is getting to a point where, it eventually will get to a point where it's just like anything else. And it's such a powerful thing, but and sometimes it's quite hard to spot.
No, of course, that's the hardest thing because you almost become a professional at kidding yourself that everything's all right. You
Yeah,
spend all this time lying to yourself about things,
yeah,
and I know from my personal experience, I told myself so many lies about, oh, everything's fine, but the telltale sign was no sleep, and I'd just go and find comfort in the nearest food place, and you then start putting clothes on, they're not fitting. That's a sign that something ain't right, and that's
yeah,
when I decided things had to change.
yeah.
And
No, exactly that. Like you said, it's almost like a silent predator, I guess. You know, you don't notice it until you know there's some big thing that happens, and you know, it's like, so if you can spot it earlier, or the relationships that you have with people, because you're more open and you're more frank with them, they can see those signs earlier.
yeah, of course.
Um, and like I said, being in an elite environment where you are close to people each and every day, you get to notice that. But it goes back to that whole cultural point I speak about, and that's part of relationships forming with people, is that you get to understand people better and how people react and how people need to be spoken to. And you know, some people will need an arm put around them, some people will just need a look. You know, everyone's different,
Mm.
but the closer you are, the more you can understand people, you understand how they work. It's easier to spot when things are not always right.
No, of course.
In
And
such a pressurized environment, things are not always going to be right.
no, of course not. And talking of like culture and things like that, how have you found being away from the rugby culture during this lockdown time? Being at home with the family?
Yeah, I mean, it is quite difficult. You know, like I said, rugby. I keep saying rugby, but it's sport in general, team sport, individual. You know, you're forced into a group where you have 30, 40, 50 mates. Do you know what I mean? And you see them every day, and it's different personalities, and you know, you have different jokes, different banter, different laugh. You play jokes on people, you wind each other up. Um, you just have that kind of that socialising with each other, and then you get forced into lockdown, and you know, I find myself playing practical jokes on my two kids just to keep myself entertained, trying to wind them up just to keep myself busy. But yeah, that's the hardest part. I mean, everyone's struggling with it. We make Zoom calls, we have quizzes with each other. We're on the WhatsApp group, taking the mick out of each other, just trying to keep a bit of normality. But there are times when it's not been easy. You know, the same similar routine, and like I said to you, go back to what I said originally. Like as a rugby player, you have a focus every week, like 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, whatever the turnaround is. You have a new focus. You know, something that re-energizes you. Whether it's we're playing Saracens this week, we're playing Northampton this week. You know, something to learn again, so prepare for. And all of a sudden, you find yourself with no end sight. Can be a little bit demoralising.
No, of course.
Um, you know, and I think if I was younger and maybe didn't have my wife on at me to do those jobs that I've been putting off for so long, putting my energy into those, that I'd be probably in a different position. But like it's been nice in terms of mentally recharging.
Hmm.
You know, obviously physically your body's had a rest. Mine might have rested too much. I wanted to be a bit more active for the next few weeks. But mentally, just stepping away from an industry which is so high pressure, where you're scrutinised, you know, on a television set, you know, in front of thousands, if not millions of people, whatever it is. Um, you know, to take a step back and breathe, and sometimes realise how fortunate you are, and what else you've got going on in your life. Remember, you know, you're not just a rugby player; you're a person as well.
No, of course. And
A sportsman, like I'm a dad, I'm a husband. You know, I've got other roles to fulfil, and apparently, as being a husband, I've got a lot more roles to fill than I realised.
head DIY man. But
Yeah,
talking of like the physical side of things,
yeah.
that first day back, you know full well the S&C coach is coming out and going, right, boys, Bronco.
Yeah, I won't be surprised. I won't be surprised. I think there's teams that there are S&C coaches that'll be doing that, and there'll be S&C guys that'll have to kind of fight the urge to do that. Because I mean, if you saw the Bundesliga, the German football league, I mean, them going back early has kind of put us in a good place, because I think they had 8 soft tissue injuries in the first weekend or something, where people have just been overworked straight away.
Yeah.
There have to be a graduation, a block, like a build up back into it. You know, boys have obviously been training as much as they can at home, you know, road running or running on a pitch and doing whatever boys can. But it's not the same. By
No.
no means. Like we couldn't. I think we've just argued. Unions just argued that we would need at least a minimum of 4 weeks before we could play a game. to get conditioned, to get ready for the brutal contact that it is, the physical side of it, not just the gym and the running, but the actual smashing, the scrums, the mauls, the rucks, the clearing each other out. That no matter how much training you don't get used to that, by the way, as you'll know.
No.
But it's still on a Sunday morning. I wake up on all fours trying to get down the stairs like a child, but just through the pain of it. But that's the period. But I think a lot of people are professional enough to have kept themselves in half decent shape, but it will still be a shock to the system. It's the same as any year. Like you have 5 weeks off in the off season, and no matter how much preseason. I remember the first preseason game. There's nothing like it. Nothing like it whatsoever. You could play 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 4 minutes. It feels like you played 100 minutes of trying to tackle a train, for instance. Like you're just so sore the next day. So until you get acclimatized to it, it's gonna be a tough one. But I think everyone's looking forward to it, as long as it's safe to return to.
Yeah, that is it. And I was talking to some friends the other day about it, saying like, obviously, us at the amateur level, really pissed off because I think the last time I played was maybe middle of February, and then we had a game postponed, and then Corona came in, and they just went right, no training, that's it, and then made the executive decision to can the whole thing off. And I mean, it was a big call to go from championship down. That you're cutting off people, especially in the championship, and probably national one that feeds into it, that are definitely semi-pro, and that is big. Yeah, it's an income for them at the end of the day. And for that to have been boo-booed and just canned straight off was a big call, I think. But like you say, coming back to going straight back in, yeah, nothing compares to that first hit or that first, all right, boys, yeah, right, it's contact session. No amount of being on the road running, no amount of shifting tin will prepare you for that. And I think that's what people don't see.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, you probably would have got away with it. I said things have changed so much now. It's, player welfare is paramount. And I was just as frustrated as you when it was called off. I was doing my level 3 coaching badge, coaching my local team, my local team, having a bit of banter every Tuesday, Thursday night with the lads, which was quite amusing, and trying to get one up on me all the time. But which I do miss. But yeah, to can that straight away was big. But I think that's just because the RFU obviously took that stance, whereas they don't have control over the Premiership. But like you said, it's going to be interesting, and maybe it'll, in the long term, maybe it'll increase participation rates. Maybe people are going to want to get back into sport, and maybe this lockdown's people are going to miss that camaraderie and of being around people, and maybe they're going to want to, you might see numbers improve. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, even on a non-playing level as well, especially at the grassroots, getting people back coming down for a cheap beer and watching some rugby is a good, well, if you ask me, it's the ideal Saturday afternoon. But it's what people, like you say, people have missed sport during this time and things like that. And when you've got something that is walking distance from your house to go and watch a game on a Saturday afternoon, regardless of whether that is rugby, football, or whatever the sport is that you've got, if you can start getting an increased revenue through on the grassroots level, it speaks volumes, because people are then more interested in the professional element in terms of then seats, people filling out seats in stadiums.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, at the grassroots level, people coming down, buying a couple of beers and watching the game, buying a ticket, whatever it is, that's money in the club. That's money in the new equipment or new facilities. It all adds up, and that's pretty much what you want to see. The social side of the game improving, as well as the game on the pitch. And you want to see clubs build, and like I said, if it promotes that more and more people get interested in the rugby, then brilliant. But I just think social interaction is going to be massive now after a period of lockdown and just being in one household and being around your immediate family. Getting out and being sociable is going to be massive for, again, referring to that point we spoke about already, mental health.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, we all know how social rugby players are. I mean, I'm sure it's just as social at the top level as it is down at the amateur.
That hasn't changed, I think. That's the thing that's part of rugby's DNA. I think being sociable and having a couple of beers, that the quantity might change as you go down the league, but the want to have a sociable beer has definitely not changed.
Yeah, I mean, it is key to coming back to that part of the sport where you say switching off from being on the field to then coming off and turning the switch off from it being your job to then having the social side and spending a night with 40 of your mates having a few beers and food.
Yeah, like you said, that's part of it. That's part and parcel of, I can't speak of all sports, but definitely of rugby. Of just, the thing I like about rugby is that it hasn't changed. Like I said, I played football all the time, and people would shower up, get in the cars, and go home. And now, if I might play against an old teammate or something like that, or they visit our ground, or I go to their ground. I remember like recently we played the European Cup. We played against Ulster away in Belfast, and one of my mates that I was at London Irish Academy with, Robbie Herring's the hooker at Ulster. So I grabbed a couple of beers from the cold bucket to change him off the game, and I went into the Ulster change room and I sat down his locker and we had a few beers together and just chatted about him and his family and how old times are, and just little things like that, which are hidden gems of the game. I think so important. And at any level, just being able to have a beer with a teammate or an opposition, what happens on the pitch stays on the pitch.
That's good.
That goes back years. I was told stories years ago of things happening on the pitch, and then people buying beers off the pitch, and it's just there are so many things that have changed on the pitch nowadays. But there are some little sacred rules that I think that things that should never be touched or shied away from.
Yes, it comes back to what you were saying about having core values about things.
Okay.
And that is one of those core values is that me and you can have a punch up on the pitch, but don't you worry, I'll buy you a beer in the bar after and sit and have a chat about. And I think that is one thing, like you say, you go from professional level right down to the grassroots, is having that core value installed in you that you always stay after the game for a couple of beers, man of the match, dick of the days, all those sort of things that are very important to rugby.
Yeah, the thing I've learned as I've gone up in level is like this. This will sound a bit, I guess, a bit cliche, but like there's values and there's behaviours, and there's people that say that these are our values and this is what we kind of look up to. But the difference between values and behaviours is you've got a value which is down on paper, but a behaviour is that value in action. So unless you're actually living it, unless you're actually doing it, the value means nothing.
Yeah.
So like you can say about let's have a beer after the game, but if you come to the game, you finish it, you shower up, and you're like, oh right, yeah, see you later, and you shoot off in your car because you want to get home, or you don't want to do your duties after the game, you want to get out, you shoot and tie, then you're not actually living it. And that's a big cultural thing that I know I keep using the word culture. I'm sorry about that, but they're things that I've learned, and like I said to you, like there are things that in rugby that coaches still like to see, and like I said, that's something that I'd always treasure. Being able to have a beer or having a food after a game with an opposition and having a teammate. And the longer you play the game, you're seeing more and more people, and you respect each other more. And and let's say that I always like, unless I go away to somewhere and we get hammered, we get spanked, then I'll be straight on the bus. And there's been times when I've done that, but the majority of the time, it's nice just to show appreciation for fellow people that are putting their body on the line, and going out there on a weekly basis.
No, of course. You mentioned about you were obviously through the stages of doing your level 3 coaching and being down at the local club. Is coaching something you see yourself doing post career?
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, I did my degree in my degree. The idea of doing my degree was to be a PE teacher, and I probably got halfway through that and then realised that I don't know if I could be up till midnight marking work. That's not really me. Teaching was actually the route. And like I said, the amount that I've learned as 11 years as a professional, I think it'd almost be wasting it if I didn't go into coaching, some form of coaching. And like I said, I did my level 2 when I was at Irish. I started doing my level 3 this year. I still don't know how that's going to end yet, but I find it quite rewarding. I get a real buzz out of it, of just little things of passing on, whether it's a drill, an anecdote, whatever it is, and just trying to pass on information is to see people get better and, at the same time, see people have fun, because you have to enjoy it, otherwise no one will do it. But it's definitely something I can see myself doing, but it's just a competitive field to get into.
Of course, and you almost have to you wouldn't leave the game and go straight in at Premiership level again. It's
No.
almost you'd have to come away from the peak of the sport and go in at, I don't know, national levels, and then build a reputation again. And I suppose with what you said earlier about all sportsmen being competitive, it would spark that new competitive edge for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've got one of my best mates. He's been a professional for about 13, 14 years, and then he started coaching at university level and championship level. And he said he got a bigger buzz out of coaching than playing, and just that whole idea of kind of being in the same field but renewing your focus.
Mm.
So that buzz of kind of mentally recharging and him seeing a reward that he's still part of rugby, but now his focus has changed. Instead of like himself getting better, he's able to put that into other people getting better. And he gets a real spark out of it. So, that's something that definitely I enjoy. And, even at Caution Rugby Club, seeing the boys when I could turn up to games or, seeing them train or they get a good win on a Saturday and you see the participation numbers on a Tuesday, you can have a right laugh. It's quite uplifting and quite rewarding.
And the thing is, it's an opportunity for them to pick the brains of someone who has been there, done it, rather than having a coach who is a coach by the book, who, when you say, right, boys, we're going to do this, they then say to you, well, why? You're able to give a load of reasons why it then will work on a pitch on a Saturday, whereas potentially a paperwork coach, per se, turns around and goes, well, it was in my book, so we're going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a massive aspect to that, and you hit the nail on the head, but there is also the trap for players to fall into. So just because you played the game doesn't mean you're going to be a good coach.
No, of course.
You have to be able to convey yourself, and like I said, understand individuals and understand, again, that relationship idea of being able to have a quiet word with someone or being able to, there's some players that have been able to, you can not call them out, but you can say in front of them that you're doing that wrong, that's not good enough, or try this, try that, and you'll get a response out of them. But I found coaching extremely rewarding, something I'd love to do. And just passing on that wisdom. Like I got, when I was a youngster, just even as a player, I had a South African prop who looked after me, took me under his wing and passed me on a fountain of knowledge. And, it just feels the natural progression to kind of pass on the years that I've learned. Otherwise, when I look back on it, I've done 11 years, okay. I've earned a living out of it, but I've got a ton of knowledge that I feel like that could do someone else just as good.
No, that is it, and it goes right through it in terms of your knowledge of line out, scrums, rucks, mauls, dark arts, and then the off field stuff as well, where it then comes down to like a knowledge of how to produce a good night out, initiations, all that sort of stuff that is part of the values of rugby.
Yeah, again, the frustrating part is that things are changing in rugby, in sport, probably. Like, I always tell the story that when I was an academy player, going kind of, I guess, off topic a bit, but I was an academy player, when we were at London Irish, we weren't allowed to train with the first team.
Right.
We had to earn our stripes. So we would sit there on the bench and we would watch the first team train, and the academy boys would either train afterwards or they would fill in. Someone swapped out, they'd fill in a role. So you're kind of just there to be used. And then I remember Bob Casey, the captain at the time, he was a second row. He had a problem with his knee, and they were doing scrums at the end of the session. And he said, Garth, can you just quickly swap in for me to do scrums? And I was like, we weren't down to do scrums, so I was sitting there on my pair of my moldies. So I was like, no worries, mate, jumped straight in. Quickly bind up for the first team scrum, happy days, here's my chance, get in there anyway. And then I'm behind this South African prop, and he goes, okay, lads, good session. Stud check. And I'm like, what's a stud like? What do you mean stud check? He's like, okay, everyone show me your boots. And all the boys have got their 21mm studs on, their 18mm studs. And then I lift up my shoes and I've got my mouldy Copa Mondials on. And he's like, right, Matt, Garv's down on the floor. I'm like, what? And he's like, no, you haven't got studs on in the scrummaging session, like Cardinal sin. So I laid face down on the floor. And while I was down on the floor, the two packs walked over my back with their studs on.
Oh.
So we got like a South African prop, tight-headed prop, which was about 135 kilos. And like 15 other players walked over my back, got up, but you was accepted then. Like, now this isn't, I'm not by any means saying this is the way to do it, not at all, because like some things have changed for the better, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's how we were treated as then, and like things have changed. And now I think it's just gone a little bit too far in terms of kind of not being able to learn some of the tougher lessons of rugby, the sport. Now, like I said, I'm just going to emphasise that point again. I don't ever want anyone to get banned like I did. Do you know what I mean? But there are some areas where you still have to earn your stripes.
No, of course, and that is, yeah. I mean, a few friends of mine text me this week asking, "Can I ask you questions?" And one of them was like, "What is the best/worst initiation you have seen or can talk about?" You don't have to name anyone.
God, it's interesting. Like at professional level, initiations don't really. There's not really initiations. Kind of, it's not as specific. Like I said, you have a sing song, and then there was a thing called paddle on the bus. So you get up the front of the bus, you'd sing a song, and there was a band list of songs you couldn't sing, but no one told you what the band list was.
Right.
So they're like the most common karaoke songs, like Wonderwall, for instance, was on the band list.
Yeah, of course.
So if you sang the songs, or if you got your words wrong, or no one knew the song, or you were just really bad at singing, someone would start shouting paddle, 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 and then if all the bus jumped to the paddle, you had to stand at the front of the bus and you had to kind of drop your strides and you had to make it to the back seat of the bus and then back to your own seat. But this time, paddle meant that boys were taking shoes off, belts off, and yeah. So that was about as bad as it was professionally. My worst one was probably at university. But yeah, that was just that. Yeah, don't know if I can say much of that. If I'm honest, that was yeah, that was some nasty stuff at university. But then equally, it was when you woke up the next day and it had been done and dusted. It's one of the best feelings in life because of that acceptance. But
yeah,
back to the initiations were kind of like the way that we had a Kiwi prop. It was a captain for the Clark Dermody and All Black, and a lot of the youngsters would get a good ribbon, like a good bit of banter, or piss taken out of them, sort of thing. And the way he said to me was like, "That's a good sign."
Yeah.
If you're not getting the piss taken out of you, then you should be worried because, like, there's terms of acceptance. They're like boys want to have a laugh at you. So like when I said that this South African prop did this stud check and got me on it, next thing I know, I'm around his house every other weekend for a barbecue, or braai as they call it, South Africa. Yeah. A barbecue. You know, he's cooking me a ton of meat, looking after me. You know, was an unbelievable mentor to me. Like probably, you know, he's something I always look up to. And when I do, you know, the odd bit of talking in businesses, it's something I always bring back to. So there's that acceptance there, that initiation where you probably get tested more on a one-on-one level to see how you react. But yeah, definitely off the record, I could tell you my university one. But,
and then another question is like proudest and possibly worst moment on the field.
Yeah, so proudest moment would have been. I mean, it's different. I guess there's two. You know, some people look at it being insignificant because there are other people who've gone to international honours, but you know, singing the national anthems in England Saxon against the Irish Wolfhounds in front of my family was pretty impressive. But then running out with my kids at Twickenham, like I said, like I had Rupert in my arms, I had Lottie in my hands, and we went out to Twickenham and they saw each other on the big screen, and you know, it was in front of 62,000 people. I mean, I played like, not bragging, I played in front of bigger crowds, but having your kids with you at a special moment like that was, you know, there's a weird thing, like your goals and your ambitions in sport change as your career progresses. You know, like I said, it was always up here to be an England national or to be a club captain, and then, you know, to find something as just running out with my children that will hopefully remember that one day is kind of a big thing. I guess the negatives, the biggest downer was there's been some really, like I said, I've had some really bad injuries, some real bad injuries, which like my two necks were really nasty. One of which I thought I couldn't feel my legs, but that was quite bad. But there was a game like this is we played Harlequins at home and we lost. But I think I was not. Some people might say that I lost us that game, like, you know, they'll be joking, I missed a tackle, I lost us that game. But I actually think I lost us about 20. I think it was 21, 22 points I was responsible for. Like I went the wrong side of a ruck and I left it open, and Danny Kerr just picked and went the length of the pitch and scored. I carried in our own 22 and I got stripped and the bloke went and scored. So 2 tries were my fault. And then I gave away a couple of penalties, which they kicked. And it's quite an interesting point to talk about, to be fair, because I got myself into a position that I didn't know how to get myself out of. I'm standing next to George Ford under the posts. And I was like, George, mate, I've got to get me off. Like, I'm doing more harm than good. And I relate to, like, you might have heard it before, people talk about being called quicksand. Like, the more you fight it, the quicker you sink.
Yeah.
I was trying everything I could, like, to try and get out of this. Like, I'm playing so bad, I need to snap out of it, like a big carry, a big tackle. And I went looking for the wrong things. And the more I tried, the quicker things went wrong and wrong and wrong. And I was just literally sinking. And, you know, it was probably my worst moment in my career, but with the biggest learning curve at the same time.
Yeah, of course.
I remember speaking to one of my coaches about it. And I just said, look, I got myself in a position where I just couldn't get out of it. And it was Toby Booth, to be fair to him. We had a good chat about it, and you know, he had a similar experience of where he learned from it. And I turned to something called shaping, and it's basically about like taking the focus away from you for a minute, taking it away from yourself. At the next break of play, if ever I feel it, and this is what shaping meant to me, was that, and it sounds really bizarre, and everyone's got different triggers. Someone might be doing breathing exercise, someone might just sit down on the floor, someone might like take like fake an injury sort of thing, I mean, just to get the physio on to have a breather and a break. But he explained to me as shaping, and what it was that when there was a break in play, someone went down injured, I just count shapes. So I'd look for circles. Do you know what I mean? So I'd look at the advertising board and I'd see the O on Dyson. I go, there's a circle. And then the O on someone else's shirt, or Novia, which is another sponsor, there's another one. I'd look in the stand and I'd just start counting them. And literally I'd get to about 8 or 9. But by the time I got to 8 or 9, I'd stopped thinking about my performance and I was focused on something else.
Yeah.
And it was almost like hitting a reset button. Now I've probably gone way off topic what you was asking me.
No, it's fine, because it's helping people.
You know, it was just a way of, it was a situation that I would never want anyone to be in. You know, when you've lost a premiership game to a rival and you've been literally, like I said to you at the start, that there's been times where people have joked about it, but I actually lost us that game. Like, if I'd not played, we might have won it, but I actually lost the game. And it was just the biggest learning curve about focusing my attention away from myself for literally 30 seconds to hit that reset button to go again. And I've used it. And that was probably about 6 years ago, 6, 7 years ago. It was one of my first years at Bath. And since then, you know, every time something goes wrong, kind of reset and then just go again. Just focus on my job.
And then one final thing would be 3 tips for any youngsters or players now looking to push on within the game.
3 tips. It'll be quite vague, I guess, which is not great. I would just say, just keep listening would be one. Like, just keep listening. Never. And what I mean by that is, like, listen to your coaches, listen to, you know, your peers, your teammates, and like, always strive to get better. Never think that you're the finished article. Never think that you could be the best player on the team. You could be the worst player on the team. Just keep working. Keep listening, like I said. And I got setback. I got a few setbacks in my career. Like, again, I don't want to go off tangent, but like when I was at sixth form, I played 1 year of rugby and I went on trials at Harlequins. I went through a couple of camps and then got injured, and I went to the next camp not fully fit. And the guy then turned around and said to me, "Look, we're not going to offer you an academy place." And he went, "I don't think, actually, I know you won't play professionally." And this was like 12 months into me playing rugby, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. But I just went away from it and I listened to all my coaches and I just learned and I learned and I learned and I learned. And now, like, I've played 11 years in the Premiership. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's going to be setbacks, but just keep striving to be better. Again, that's kind of a couple of points in game one, I guess. And just do your extras. Like, what you're seen to do and what you actually do are very different things. Like, if you're on a training pitch, playing for your club, whatever level, you play with your mates, you know, if training session finishes, just do 10 passes, do 10 kicks, you know, do 10 tackles, do 10 jackals in a bag. Just do something, because you'll get an advantage over an opponent or a teammate who's just going home, you know, and the coach sees that. And because they see that and they want you, and you want to get better, you become more approachable, and the coach wants to coach you. So they spend that little bit more focus on you, if that makes sense. They want to help you.
Yeah, of course.
I guess they're the biggest things. And just don't give up. Like I said, like, I went a different route. I'm the same age as Danny Cipriani, so when I played sixth form rugby, we played against Danny Cipriani's school, Whitgift, and he was by far the best player in the school on the kind of route we were on the circuit. Is what I'm looking for. But there was other players that were age group England that we knew of. Joe Simpson was another one, the scrum half. He was on the same circuit. But there was probably about 5 or 6, and every time we played them, they'd be like, "He's going to be big. He's going to be big." And I'm like, not being disrespectful. I've not heard of them. I don't know where they are. You know. So no matter how far you are in your career, if you don't think you're going to make it, don't worry about it. Just keep going.
Yeah.
Like it's 21 before I signed with the club. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does makes perfect sense. So
Yeah, and then the other one is just, I guess one final point is look after yourself, not just physically but mentally as well. You know, take time out if you need to, talk to people if you need to, rest when you need to, especially the youngsters, that bodies that are growing and changing, and you know the impact training. Just don't be scared to rest. Missing a week might save you missing 6 weeks. Look after your body. It's the only one you've got. And take it from me, who's got, I'm about 3% Iron Man, I think, the amount of iron I've got in my body. So
no, that is brilliant. Thank you so much for giving up your time and talking to me
no
about all
problem.
that.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.